Directors on January 7th, 2021, the first meeting of this new year, an auspicious new year, which is decidedly not 2020. Calling the meeting to order at 7:32 p.m. Can we have roll call, please?
Okay. Director Boyd?
Here.
Director Decker?
Here.
Director Harvey?
Here.
Director Lohman?
Here.
Director Slater-Carter?
Present.
All right, we have all accounted for. For the president's statement, I'd like to welcome you all to a small slice of what makes America what it is. And at a time when so much is in turmoil and upheaval, our republic stands, and the will of the people is expressed through representative operations like we have at the town and community level, like Montara Water and Sanitary District and others here in our community. We're here to do the public's business. We're here to serve the public. And I'm grateful to be a part of something that is so long running and has been so heavily influenced by the community which it's intended to serve. And I count it a privilege to work with each of you, and I look forward to the good things that we're going to do for the community this year. With that's my statement. Let's move to public comment, oral comments for any items that are not on the agenda. Do we have any? Greg Diegues.
I'm your MCC rep. I today received a suite of interesting legal opinions from County Council that I find I'm unable to share with my fellow MCC council members or even my topical subcommittee due to serial meeting concerns. I can also not share those with the public due to attorney-client privilege. I wish I could share it, but I guess we'd have to pay the county council twice to provide the same answers to MWSD again, should you care to ask the same question. Now, in a similar vein, I note with some concern or hope the SAM agenda item of, quote, formation of special committee to investigate future options for SAM, unquote, scheduled for this coming Monday. And I realize you cannot share knowledge of lawsuit issues regarding SAM, which I suspect may be driving that topic. But I would hope to know whether the MCC and the community as a whole should be concerned and or interested and or affected by that topic and its fallout. In the same vein, the MCC has a strategic planning retreat scheduled for Saturday, January 23rd. And I would like to know if MWSD or members of the community have issues and priorities or even educational matters they would like considered by the council as a priority in the coming year. I presume I would be allowed to share your concerns with the council, but I'll have to check with our lawyer. Thank you for any input you can provide.
Okay.
Scott, since that's my item, could I make a quick comment on that?
Sure, Rick.
Yeah, there's no agenda here. There's a general feeling that continuing to pour millions of dollars into an old building at SAM may not be the cleverest thing in the world. So we're going to be, we brought this up at the last SAM meeting and got positive responses. The idea is to form a committee of various SAM members or GMs and look at all options that make more sense for the future with newer technologies. And that's really all we have at this point. It'll be members, general managers, SAM staff, brainstorming and investigating and just seeing if we can investigate other options to, because the SAM plant is in danger of sea level rise and 45 years old. So
built with 19th century technology.
Yep.
So do we have any other comments from the public for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, let's move on to the consent agenda. Do we have any items on the consent agenda? Any direct?
Oh, I have a quick question for Greg. Is the public invited to this retreat? They used to be.
I believe it will be a public meeting.
Okay. Since it's easy to drink my coffee here and just do it by Zoom.
So any items on the consent agenda to poll for discussion?
Nope.
This is not so much for discussion, but perhaps a something that the board needs to approve. Greg has asked to be kept informed about our financial situation, and the financial committee has not objected against that. I don't know if we need a formal process for him getting a copy of our financials as they are given to us at the end of the month.
Aren't they in our agendas?
The actual PDF is in the agendas. What Greg has been asking for, and we've submitted to Greg before and also this time, is the Excel version. I think that's what Peter is asking for.
How different is the Excel version from what's on the, and I'm blanking on the name of the transparency website?
No different really.
The issue, Scott, is it's a lot easier to work with when you get it in Excel.
All right.
Scott,
OpenGov.
the website is OpenGov, yes.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I'm just, you know, if there are material differences or not. So, okay. I don't have any objection to that sharing. I do want us to be mindful of any draft or unpublished notes that we might have in there, just to be mindful. Those draft documents are not public documents.
I am concerned about, not necessarily about Greg having it, but I am concerned about sending out Excel versions of our finances and finding them. There's sort of a chain of custody issue, in my opinion, with the internet as to what people can do with documents. So I see Christine nodding. I would like further advice on that.
Christine?
I agree with Catherine. Is the Excel transmitted to Greg via email? Is that?
Yes.
Greg, you're on mute.
I just wanted to mention it's the same information presented in the financial.
Sure.
To the meeting.
I think, you know, sending it via email to Greg alone, I mean, I know that that's probably not secure. I don't know if anyone has a suggestion how to do it in another way where it would be more secure.
Well, if we send it to Greg, it becomes a public document.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's my concern is, as I say, and it's not that I have any concerns about you, Greg, it's that I have seen funny things done with documents. And so I get concerned, you know, Peter will tell us we have to sign all our documents in blue ink. Even though there are color copiers available, just to make sure that there's an appropriate control on it.
So let me do this. Why don't we refer it to Catherine and Christine and Clemens to discuss further? I think the sense of the board seems to be sharing the data is not a problem. We just want to make sure that we don't open up a can of worms by the method in which we share. So why don't the three of you discuss it? And if you see a way forward, please do. If you want to bring it back for a general board discussion, please let me know.
I will tell you the source of my concern is that one time when we had the McDonald's restaurant at Ceremony, I wanted to put up a community notice bulletin board. And I was advised by the attorneys, if you let one agency put up or one person put up things on a public bulletin board, you then were obligated to let anybody else who wanted to post it. And I didn't want to take the liability nor the responsibility for some of what people might be putting up on my bulletin board particularly given that I don't speak either Tagalog or Chinese.
So rather than try to do this in the middle of public comment, let's refer it to this ad hoc committee of the three of you. If you see a way clear and you're satisfied together as a group, go ahead and do it. I think. Anybody object to that?
Nope.
Okay.
I think we'll follow whatever the Public Records Act mandates on this, and I think there's going to be guidance there. So
Yeah.
we'll-
So
I
take
think
the
that
time to
makes
consider
sense.
it carefully and let us know what you decide. Let's move on. Do we have any? I believe David, I saw your hand go up. David Mutri.
It was a technical answer to the question that Greg raised, but I feel like I'm not really an authorized speaker in this subject.
Well,
I'll send an email later.
Okay.
You are a member of the public.
Okay,
if you wish to make a comment, please feel free.
sure. The Google Drive capability allows limited access to a spreadsheet type document. And then it could be sent from a district email account with only access to Greg granted. And that'd be read only, I believe, was in the options. I suppose then he could play with it within the framework of that data set. You should check this out to be technically sure, but I'm just saying that's a possibility that might provide some access and a lot of security. So that was my comment.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll give a report on this.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Do we
I have
have?
one more question on the item number 7. I noticed from the monthly water production report that the surface water was substantially less in the month, I believe, of October and November than usual. Is there a specific reason for that?
Specific reason is that the flow is dropping off. Those are essentially the month where we now, after a year and a half after the precipitation essentially, because it's been over a year since we had the good rainfall year. The flow of the creek is diminishing to minor amounts. That's the reason why it's been dropping off.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any items that anyone wanted to pull for discussion? If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to approve the minutes for the regularly scheduled board meetings December 3rd and 17th of 2020, the special board meeting of December 3rd, 2020, and the Finance Committee meeting December 22nd, 2020, to approve the financial statements for November 2020, the warrants for January 1st, 2021, the SAM Flow report for November 2020, the monthly review of the current investment portfolio, the connection permit applications received, the monthly water production report, the rain report, the monthly solar energy report, and the monthly public agency retirement service report for October 2020. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Okay. Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to new business, item 1, receipt of the 2019-2020 fiscal year end finance review.
Thank you, Scott. So this is really a comparison of the budget that we prepared for the past fiscal year and the actuals. And so this look at the comparison that Peter prepares for us each year. We get a 6 months finance review from him that looks a bit similar. And we also get each year the fiscal year end finance review. And I would actually, since Peter has been doing the heavy lifting on this, I would like him to present the highlights of what we've been seeing. We also walked this through with the Finance Committee on December 22nd. And the Finance Committee recommended that we present this report as is. So we're asking the board really to receive this report. There's no action required. And Peter, maybe you can take it from here.
Thank you, Clemens. Yes, as Clemens said, this presentation is the fiscal year end budget to actual with actuals using our audited financial statements. We received our audit presentation last month. We received our so the unmodified audit report for fiscal year 1920. And Clemens is correct. So this is kind of the first in a series of presentations which look close to identical. We've all gotten very comfortable with the presentation, the categories that we use, and it's nice in the fact that we get to go from prior fiscal year with audited numbers, knowing that we have a level of assurance with the actuals, and then that falls right into the mid-year budget review, and those will be using the 1231 numbers. Those are going to be available here to us in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be July 1 through 12/31/2020, and using those, we go right into budget season. Using the 6-month analysis, and then using those figures to extrapolate out for the rest of the calendar or the rest of the fiscal year, and really start building the budget. I harp on this timeline just because it goes to show that this process really begins. It's an 18-month process. Here we are in January and starting the budget for 21/22. And then we go through this whole calendar year, and but like I said, we are coming up, us and the finance committee and staff are coming up with these figures well in advance. So when we prepare the fiscal year end budget to actual, it's always, when we look at this thing and seeing it all kind of at this stage, and we've gone through the whole year already, and seeing how close we are or how far away, you go back and think, okay, what were we thinking March of 2020, March of 2019, going into and setting these numbers. It's kind of interesting, but like I said, we've gone through it before. We've gone through it with the finance committee. We've answered their questions to a satisfactory manner. Highlight wise, I'll go by fun, because what I'm looking at is page 1. I like these ones here. The ones that go through and have the budget as was approved, and then with the actuals in the same categories. I said the same format goes. We have the detail behind, but going into the fiscal year, we were anticipating a $1 million loss, or having to go into our reserves by about $1 million. And it ended up not happening. We were actually positive, close to $1 million. The main factors being the CIP projects that were scheduled did not move forward at the pace that we had anticipated. That's the major line item. The other pieces are the professional services. We had anticipated a lot more legal expenses that did not occur during this time period. So both good and bad. He said we go through these figures and we just do our best at that time. It's a different finance committee, it's different push and analysis, but we come up with these figures at the best of our ability in March of the year before, and then 18 months takes place and we come up with our actuals. So the big pieces there being for the sewer side, sewer rates, they increased 19%. We see that in numbers that played out. ERAF, we always, not always, we've gone back and forth on what to do with ERAF. This year, over 1920, we budgeted a portion of it, expecting to see some. We actually received a total amount of $295,000. If you pull that out, we come almost right smack dab to what we budget for actual property tax assessments. So I said ERAF is the bump there, and that's split 50-50 between water and sewer. So those are the two revenue items. Personnel wise, pretty close. $350,000. We were within $12,000. Good. SAM piece, what the difference here, this $90,000, is we budget on a cash flow basis for collection system repairs that were billed by SAM. That's a pass through. The O&M assessments and the collections budget, those were budgeted to the penny. There was no variance there. The variance that we see are collection fees that were incurred and we paid that we capitalized at the end of the year. So that's the major difference here. The CIPPs as well, these get brought in. These are from our cash flow statement for actual capital costs incurred during the fiscal year. So that's the highlight of our budget to actual. Page 2 shows a year-by-year trend. It's basically 1 year actuals compared with last year's actuals. So that's our sewer side. Water, so now going to page 6 of the report, something like this. Once again, we had budgeted $545,000 loss. We only came out to be a $60,000 loss. So it's that worked out well in our favor. Property tax being the large item, as I discussed, it's ERAF. For the expenditure side of things, we had, during this time, we were incurring a great deal of expenditures for our water quality engineering. That was going back and forth with the water boards. And so they were just really, there were a lot of expenses in the year before. So we had budgeted for it. It did not repeat in 1920. So that was beneficial for us, but that's a major cause of the variance there. For the professional services, same. Legal services were down. Capital, we actually were over budget for our CIP. A number of projects that were not anticipated had to be undertaken during fiscal year 1920. So with that, I said I'd like to open it up to any questions that you may have.
Peter, I have a quick question. We
Yes.
have a new person here who's going to be learning the language. Could you explain for David what ERAF is? Because it's only a government accounting term. It's not something you would run into on a general spreadsheet.
Yes. Educational Reform
Reading.
Augmentation Fund is ERAF. It is an amount of money that's collected that was held by the county for a number of years that my understanding is it was kind of held in limbo, and we did not receive it for a number of years. It's supposed to go to some form of education, and if it is not, it is pushed back out to the various municipalities that are in that are within the county.
Government agencies. Government agencies.
Correct. And so when we go through our budget cycle, it's been a relatively new occurrence for us. We received it for the last 5 or 6 years, but the amount is always fluctuating. We do not receive confirmation from the county as far as what we can expect. And there's always the argument that we won't receive any of it if certain special interests get their wish. We will not receive anything. So we're always we take a conservative approach for the most part. I said for the 7 years that I've been with the district, we've only budgeted for the 1% ad valorem that we can expect. Other than that, we see it as a windfall for a current fiscal year. But it typically ranges. So when it does come in between $250,000 upwards of $350,000. So if it comes in, it's great, but we do not budget for it.
I'd mentioned that most agencies have property tax as a portion of their revenue base, but our portion of property tax revenue is much smaller than surrounding agencies.
Yes.
We're not a community services district, has a much larger chunk of revenue coming off of property taxes than we do. And there's long historical reasons for all of that. But when people think about the property tax revenue that we bring in, it's not insignificant, but it's nothing like some other agencies get. So it's nice when we have it, but we manage to get by without it. But that's why there's more responsiveness in our rate and fee structure that's tied more directly to the cost of operations. whereas like GCSD has some insulation from that because of the property tax revenue base.
Rick had his hand up.
Rick?
I just had just a quick silly question. I understand all the spreadsheets and stuff like that, but when I open the attachment here, it starts off with a cover letter and then it goes to the page 1 with a chart of sewer service charges. This looks like page 1 of this. I was having trouble manipulating in the document, and it's got a little chart in the middle that says proposed sewer rates. And it says current sewer rates with an asterisk. And then it has proposed rates for July 18 and then July 19. And I didn't understand the current rates because there's a little asterisk I couldn't find. And the numbers are very low.
Yes. So what you're reviewing is the executive summary, which we lay out, which corresponds and gives a little bit of dialogue for why we may see variances or not. That chart that you see is from the sewer rate study, which was performed in fiscal year 17-18, which would come into play for the 2-year period of July 1, 2018-19, and then 19-20. So that's what these were the rates. The asterisks there were the rates that were in play as of July 1, 2017, going through 6/30/2018.
Okay, that makes sense. There was no date with that one, so I couldn't, it said current.
Yes. No,
That threw me off.
no, this was a holdover from last year's. It made more
Okay.
sense last year. I said that was the first year. I looked at it and said, okay, well, we could still hold on to it. This now, of course, is going into this current fiscal year that we're in is no longer in play.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any additional questions?
I would like to point out that at this time last year, we were thinking we might have a settlement with Half Moon Bay on their lawsuit against us. That might have been some of the budget differences. Instead, we are going to court. So for the upcoming budget, it's going to, again, we're going to have to be making some good guesses, but we need to protect this district from Half Moon Bay's attempt to push its SAM user costs onto Montara and Granada. And so I think we need to remind folks that that was part of what we were budgeting for, was with all the numbers we had run, we were looking at increases in the SAM costs, particularly with Half Moon Bay's, what was it, Clemens? Payment under protest, which is attempting to give Montara and Granada a huge number, the requirement to pay for a huge number of past projects that millions of dollars worth that Half Moon Bay has paid for, but under protest.
No, you're absolutely. I said during that time, so we had a best case scenario and a worst case scenario, and it said none of them were pretty, but like I said, these are 18 months ago, and we just do not know what will come to fruition, more than 18 months afterwards when it comes to June 30, 2020. So it's a difficult process, but I said I like to highlight this piece because I said it brings that budget process home, looking back at it and saying, okay, well, how do we perform when it was put under audit? So,
right. Good.
Okay, so let's, thank you, Peter. Let's move on to item 2. Review and possible action concerning temporary amendment to the personnel manual and general manager's employment agreement concerning vacation payout and accruals due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, so I think this spells it pretty much out. We're looking to introduce some temporary changes to the way we're handling the vacation accruals. And we're currently limiting the vacation accrual for all employees to 30 days. And we allow employees to take up to 5 days off their accrued vacation leave per year as compensation. And in addition to that, the vacation requests actually need to be submitted by February 28th of each year. And now we ran into these different circumstances due to COVID-19 in the past year and in the current year, where it has been very difficult for employees to take vacation, quite frankly. Additionally, I think the most excitement that I've received, or the most feedback that I've received from the employees, is about the February 28th requirement. We're a small agency. It is actually of a great advantage to us to have some of the flexibility to schedule vacation as it's needed. And the planning ahead is probably something that works for large agencies very well. It doesn't really for us. So that's the biggest feedback that I've gotten back. So what we're really suggesting is that we increase the accrual allowance for that's essentially retroactive for the rollover from past year to this current year 21. The increase would be from 30 days to 50 days, and also permit an optional vacation pay of up to additional 20 days. And that would be before the fiscal year, before this fiscal year, so the 2021 ends. So we're talking about before in June, it would be still possible. These recommendations are coming to us from our Labor Council, and Christopher is here with us tonight. And Christopher, since I took already all the highlights away, I'm wondering if you want to fill in the blanks of what I left out, maybe. Ultimately, our recommendation will be to adopt the resolution with the title Resolution Adopting a Temporary Amendment to the Personnel Manual and General Manager's Employment Agreement concerning vacation payout and accruals due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Great. Thank you, Mr. General Manager, and good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. It's very good to see you all, and Happy New Year. Like the General Manager very accurately and succinctly summarized for the board, the recommendations are before you tonight to consider, extending both upping the cap in which employees can accrue time, and hopefully they can take them off sometime this year. I almost said next year, but no, sometime in 2021, as well as adding an optional cash out provision. And these recommendations really stem from our experience over the past year representing other agencies such as Montara. Our firm has the privilege of representing about 36 public entities, and through our representation of those agencies, I'd like to say that a majority, if not all, have adopted some form of measures one way or another with regards to employee vacation accruals. One of the driver is also to recognize employees for their dedication and hard work over the past year, as well as to support local public health officials in ensuring that we don't inadvertently, right, give the reverse incentive just to take time off and travel just because our time is going to run out and we're going to lose that time. And that has been a very effective tool, at least from an employer standpoint, to help with the control of COVID as well. So it not only benefits the organization, but it also serves a greater public policy interest. And so the recommendation specific to Montara is what the general manager outlined. It is something that we believe is fair, both from an employee relations standpoint, but also from a budgetary standpoint, that can accomplish the purpose of achieving that equity for the employees in the organization. And I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the public? Board members?
Oh, I believe it's the same thing, Christopher, that we just did at SAM, isn't it? So
Sam did something similar. Yes, sir. Thank
very
you.
similar to this, and I think it's a great policy. Gives us more flexibility.
Christopher, I have a question for you. If, say, someone goes ahead and banks, so we currently have a cap of 30 days of accrued vacation. If somebody accrues, say, 49 days, and we get to the end of 2021, and they still have 49 days on the books, what happens to their accrued vacation?
It will be paid out at the end of that year, since the board is only adopting this measure as a temporary cap before it basically, like Cinderella, expires on December 31st of 2021. So if people have over that cap and the board doesn't take further action, then it'll just be an automatic payout consistent with your current policy.
Okay, is that spelled out in writing for us somewhere?
We could include that in the notes of the board's approval tonight, but by operation of the document that you're adopting, that's essentially how it will be carried out. And if that meets the board's expectations, when we communicate with the employees, we can make sure we spell that out further.
Yeah, I'd like those boundary conditions to be pretty clear so nobody gets caught unawares. Peter?
Yes. So we do this analysis on a yearly basis with in conjunction with the audit for our compensated absence liability as well as footnote. But so we've never done it mid-year. So with this something that would be brought into question. We have the necessary reports. So I just bring this up to all, but just because it's outside of our usual process.
It falls in line with what the employee manual requests, Peter. I know the audit is happening on June 30, and the auditor is taking that perspective, but the personnel manual speaks about the cap applied for the calendar year. And that's the reason why we're doing it right now. And yeah, I wanted to add to what Christopher said. Yes, so the cap on vacation time would be valid for the entire year. The payout option, so the payout that would happen at the end of this year would be, as Christopher said, in accordance with the current employee manual. So it would be only the 5 days allowed vacation pay at the end of this year. This policy, this temporary policy suggests up to 20 days for this current fiscal year. So that's where we're referring to the fiscal year, and the reason there, yeah, so thank you.
Okay. Do you have any further questions or discussion? If not, can I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Catherine and Jim moving and seconding. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Boyd,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Harvey,
Aye.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Slater Carter.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Let's move to item 3, review and possible action. This is new business 3, review and possible action concerning sewer authority mid-coast side process for Granada Force Main segment 4, staging area assessment.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So this item was brought to us by Director Rick Lohman, who is one of our Sewer Authority Mid-Coast Side representatives. He serves on the board of directors for SAM. And he really asked for this opportunity to review and discuss this process that SAM is undertaking to assess the biological impact. And that is now to an area that was erroneously used as a staging area for the SAM Force Main Segment 4 replacement project. There's a whole history that comes along with it. This was ultimately enforced by the city of Half Moon Bay and significantly delayed the project. This unfortunate erroneous staging area that the contractor used. So Rick, I think we have an opportunity here to receive a report from you, discuss and this topic, and I think the board can then advise the SAM representatives. Rick.
Sure. First of all, what I don't want this item to be is hours of rehashing the project and the hundreds of thousands of dollars in overcharges and stuff like that. First of all, I don't want to rehash that at SAM either, because that's just makes everybody angry at everybody. And my goal at SAM is to try to, with the proposal to look at SAM's future, is to try to bring us back together again and actually working together. What I'm aiming for today is, in reviewing what happened, and just the quick review, the project had some problems where the contractor destroyed some willow trees. Half Moon Bay shut down the project, hired their personal biologist for $30,000 to stand there and look at the dead trees for a week. Then demanded a project manager for more than $40,000, all on non-bid personal contracts. Then they brought in their biologist again to do a reassessment or fixing up the thing, how to do it. This was a huge expense, but what I'd like to bring up at SAM on Monday are some possible new procedures to, one, I think everybody at SAM wants to save money. So the kinds of things I'm looking for advice from you folks are, what kind of things can we propose? I would like to propose things like, first of all, we should look at some of these contracts that are going out a little more closely to see if there are potential dangers and needs for biologists and project managers. Do it up front, so it's in the project, not huge add-ons at the end. I would like to say something about, Kishan has X number of thousands of dollars he can just spend. I would like all significant variances from a project in cost to be brought back to SAM for one, discussion, because there's a whole room full of very, very smart people there. And Barbara Dye and other people have made comments like, well, why don't we discuss this next time? Because maybe it's willow trees. Maybe we don't need a $30,000, $50,000 reassessment at the end. So before we jump in and just start spending money, let's discuss it. If it's an emergency, call an emergency meeting. That's not a problem if the pipe's leaking or stuff like that. This was not an emergency and could easily have been brought up at a special meeting or the next meeting. I would like to request or require a procedure where all major variances from a contract are brought back to SAM for a discussion. Let's see, do we need it? What's the cheapest way to do it? I don't know how we politely say I'm 100% against non-bid personal contracts by whoever the controlling agency is, just picking their personal consultant with no bidding. I think $30,000 to have someone stand there for a couple days to look at dead trees and do nothing is a bit excessive, and maybe I'm in the wrong business. I could do that. But again, the process for SAM will not be to get in a huge fight with them again over why did you do this to us? It's to how can we prevent this in the future by laying down some procedures or thoughts like all variances above X number of dollars should come back for a discussion and authorization. No bid contracts unless it's some kind of absolute emergency that has to be done in 10 minutes right then, and stuff like that. So, and again, I'm trying to work with SAM along with our committee, which is on the agenda for next meeting, which we're forming the Future SAM Committee, whatever you want to call it. And I'd like to get to, I want to make that work. because that can solve all kinds of problems for the coast side to work cooperatively on a new vision of SAM. So if folks have some extra thoughts or discussions on how we can prevent these just massive cost overruns. Another one was in similar, I'm not sure how it was authorized, but when we were doing the wet weather project, Half Moon Bay pressed for an alternative study at that massive pump project. That cost like $60,000, $70,000, came out 4 or 5 times the cost of the wet weather project. This money just thrown away. And I know everybody wants to save money, and I'd like some ideas or thoughts. In addition to what I've said, can people think of anything that we can ask Half Moon Bay or all these contracts where, I mean, Half Moon Bay had the bit in their teeth and they legally could do whatever they want to, and they did. And it cost us a ton of money. It only cost them half of what they, proposed to get what they did. And they managed to pay their personal consultants huge amounts of money. And I'd like to find ways to not do that in the future. Any other thoughts? This will be once today. I'll call Kish and Catherine tomorrow to put an item on the agenda covering this, but I'd like some additional feedback if anybody else has any ideas.
Can we send you our ideas in the next day or so, Rick?
Probably want to get them to me before noon. If you can't think of anything right now, before noon, because we have to get the request to Catherine and Kishan to get it on the agenda.
Okay.
Oh, we'll put it on the agenda. Let's
So
call
are you-
Keishan in the morning.
Rick, are you thinking about all change orders or something above a certain threshold or?
Pretty much open anything that we think a Half Moon Bay would go along with. Just, if we do a change order, they classified it as an emergency and just shut the whole project down, which ran all kinds of costs up. The guy had to evacuate the thing, bring all his equipment back.
I have a small suggestion, Rick.
Okay.
No projects in Half Moon Bay. We haven't had any of these problems with the county. And Half Moon Bay is the one who tends to complain about the cost of projects. And then they're the one who add thousands up to hundreds of thousands of dollars to the projects. And the project with the wet weather holding tanks came about because Half Moon Bay was working, I believe, with Dan Child to put in some kind of fancy pump thing that delayed everything for $100,000. And we would have had, fortunately, it's been a dry winter. Hopefully that won't be that way next year, but that tongue in cheek when I say that, but I think the way to look at this is if we add having a supervisor on the job and all this pre stuff, then automatically the costs are going to go up and we're going to even get less done in Half Moon Bay. The reason we had that project was because Half Moon Bay refused to fix the pipe. I know I'm talking to the choir, but I think we should put in an itemized list, and we should ask where the staging area is. That's something that makes all the sense in the world to me. The agency, we need to know where that is. The community needs to know it. And I think it was an oversight on this particular project, or maybe it was just a lapse in keeping up with the times. And so maybe we should be looking at our contracts for parts that we need to add.
Sure. And again, that's part of the question. We could just, since we've had an example of a disaster, we need to make absolutely sure that staging areas are referenced. The thing I'm after is just pre-analyzing the projects better, because maybe the next project will require a botanist to be on. So this one didn't. And I don't want to attack Kishan in anything in the stuff he did. But I just want to say, are there other things or ways we can try to prevent this in the future by being smarter up front?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, there is another way. There's another way. You could make it a point that any project in the future will have a project manager, and that project manager will coordinate the effort with all parties involved. And that it is up to the project manager finally to decide to go ahead and to decide on any subcontractors and the amounts that subcontractors are paid,
Sure.
leaving the responsibility for the project with the project manager.
Yeah, I'd like to tweak that just a little bit to phrase that is be sure and have a study before the project's released. Do we need a project manager? Because in the past, Kishan has done it, and for most small projects, you don't need another guy standing there just, you know, watching the stuff. But but if it's a huge project and it's decided they want people, and Sam, not just Half Moon Bay, wants a project manager, then I want it in the contract. I don't want these surprises afterwards that, oh, well, now you've got to add one, and here's the person, and here's his request. And, you know, you owe him $60,000 now.
Well,
That's
what
what I'm
was
trying to
what was
avoid.
particularly galling about this whole thing with the Force Main project is that Half Moon Bay dictated who we were going to be hiring, and they were people who already work for Half Moon Bay.
Yeah.
So we couldn't
Unbid contracts.
They were unbid contracts. I agree with you, Peter, but I think we need to have the language be, we have a project manager unless it's brought to the board and the majority of the board says we don't need a project manager. I think it's an opt-out, not an opt-in. And I think having the other thing we can talk about is perhaps we have a part-time project manager on contract with Sam.
Okay.
I have a procedural question about why was a biological assessment not required as part of the permitting?
It was a neg deck because it was right alongside the highway.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a neg deck. There was no required biological assessment. So this was an after the fact assessment.
Well, the
based on what
contractor
happened.
screwed up. The
Yeah,
contractor.
okay, all right. So, but let me finish the thought. So based on what happened, do we have any understanding why it was written as a before the fact biological assessment that spoke in hypotheticals rather than to the specifics of what occurred? Like if it's me and somebody's bringing me this biological assessment and somebody's asking me to accept this report, I might reject it and say it deals in hypotheticals instead of you know, an actual damage assessment. And in terms of, you know, how to mitigate the damage, I need to speak directly to, you know, what happened. So like if, for example, it's about mitigating damage to willows, I'm going to ask, well, how is this different from what happened at the airport years ago, where willows were cut below the water line, and you go look on Google Maps or Apple Maps now, and you see these lush, full willows that grow back on their own when you leave them alone.
Right.
I'd like to
A
understand.
little pruning is handy for willows.
Yeah.
Well, what happened at the airport was not pruning.
No, I know, it was Caltrans.
I'm the one who went and took the pictures, and it was a very bad contractor screw up. The Coastal Commission had some very serious words with them, and there were consequences. But as a result, they allowed the willows to simply, they left them alone for a long time, and now they have to trim them to keep them from overgrowing the highway because they're growing back so strong. So I'm puzzled by the nature of the report. I'm curious about what appears to me to be a lack of appropriate process for how the report came to be commissioned and then billed. I don't understand. Maybe you can help me understand that, but what I see is one agency calling shots on behalf of a JPA, and that's not a JPA obligation.
That's exactly what happened. All these were post-project on all the analyses. Half Moon Bay's comment is, we are the, I can't think of the authority, the permitting authority. We can do what we want. And they did.
Sure, but they can't obligate the JPA to funds.
They did.
They can't.
Oh,
They
They
can't.
did.
No,
No.
Christine, are they able to commit the JPA to expenditures of a nature that didn't come before the board?
Well, strictly speaking, no, they can't. You're
Okay,
correct.
so I just want to stick on that point, Rick. I know that as a working for an engineering firm years ago, I did work where I wound up obligating my client for $50,000 worth of work. And I sat down with the client to go over this and to review the bills. And he looked at this and said, where was that point where I authorized this work? And I explained to him how necessary the work was and why it happened. I gave him a big, long song and dance, and he just calm as you please, turned and looked at me and said, well, this is going to be a tough one for you to eat.
yep.
And I did. And he was absolutely right. I learned my lesson from that. I got into a situation where, kind of boiled the frog, it's like compounding the mistake a little bit at a time until it was this kind of big number. And it was, I was directing my team to go do this work and that work. And what I didn't realize was I needed to loop him in. He would have said yes, but I didn't loop him in. If Half Moon Bay thinks that they can commit SAM to expenditures without going through the SAM approval process, they got another thing coming. This is not proper. They cannot commit the agency to this. And if they don't go through an approval process, it's
After the
inappropriate
fact,
for us to pay for it.
because we needed to get the project finished and Half Moon Bay put a stop work order on it.
I understand the song and dance here, but I got to tell you, Sam reps, Half Moon Bay cannot commit the JPA to the expenditure of funds.
We asked our attorney, Carl Nelson, about this, and he said there was nothing we could do. We were acting on the advice of counsel.
We brought up everything you said, Scott, because not only the situation, but because it was Half Moon Bay too.
Well, are you saying
it was a very angry meeting,
Rick? So are you saying that after the fact, the SAM board consented to the expenditure?
We had to get rid of the
No,
stop work
I'm not
order.
asking for the explanation.
Yes.
I'm asking, did you?
yes.
Okay, I was unclear on that.
Yeah. And again, for all those reasons, my hope today is not to rehash that disaster,
Well,
but how can we prevent it?
Yeah,
And I'd like to put comments in.
Yeah.
That we all agree to. If it's not an emergency, we want to agree, no, you can't do that without bringing it back to SAM.
I think there's a very clear thing to guard against the sole source unbid contract from one agency against the whole JPA, and that is no one gets to do that. That's an established principle that we put voice to and talk about in the meeting and warn everybody. If you want to do it, the expense is on you, not on the agency. If you want the agency to pay for it, put it on the agenda.
It is in discussion with the contractor as to what SAM is responsible for and what the contractor is responsible for by not having adhered strictly to the contract.
Do we need to bring the SAM bid documents to our attorney to examine whether or not they are sufficiently complete in protecting the agency against contractor error?
I think that wouldn't hurt. I will tell you, we have a new contract or a new attorney at SAM who is not an expert in special district finance, but is a special district in CEQA and contracts.
And
So I'd like,
JPAs.
and JPAs, and I would like to give Jeremy a chance to go over this first. But I
Yeah.
think the ultimate question in all of this, to Half Moon Bay in particular, is how much do they want to add to every contract because of their most recent shenanigans? And how will that affect the future functioning of SAM? Because we're already so far in the hole on repair and maintenance, not to mention replacement, that we are in trouble. And Keishan is tearing his hair out trying to figure out how to get a CIP done. Meanwhile, we have Half Moon Bay asking for a 20-year CIP and wanting us to stick to it.
So from what, yeah, we're 100% in agreement with you, Scott, on everything you say, and those were all brought up angrily at the meeting a couple times ago.
Okay.
I think a good point would be, I'm perfectly happy to bring contracts back here. I don't think any of them are in the kind of a rush where, you know, bringing it to us for review or just the attorney is fine. I think that's a good point. And again, trying to get things in the contract, and then if it's going to be I mean, all contracts have change orders often, but this one was particularly bad because Half Moon Bay claimed that they've got total control.
And I think Clemens can address this from the manager and the manager committee perspective too.
Yeah.
And maybe we should have the managers on the manager committee review these before we take it and spend attorney dollars on it. So Clemens, if you could talk about what went on in the managers committee meetings on this thing.
I like that. That's a good suggestion.
I mean, I think this was a very special case, and
Yep.
you guys know that I was very unhappy with the how the project essentially was. Well, the implementation of the project was unfortunate, but the enforcement was clearly geared to hurt SAM and add money to SAM. And so I objected heavily to that, of course, on the manager's level. If I may speak in general terms, Rick, it's gonna be, I think you're right. You should look, there should be some SAM process that stops this additional work. There is always a chance that any project requires a change order, and it's very usual that up to 10% are issued without board approval. So an increase that makes sense where the money ends up in the ground, I think, is not necessarily something that we really want to object to.
That's right.
But an increase in like procedural steps after the fact, I think we're all in agreement that that hurts very much, and it's really somewhat unnecessary. So,
I think that's a good way of saying it too, and that we should all include that. You know, you get a 10% slush fund on almost all of these projects, and oops, we ran into a bunch of tree trunks underground and it's going to cost a little more. We don't even want to know about that, or we want to know about it, but we're not going to fight that. It's these additional, oh, I just want to give my personal biologist a whole bunch of money. That's the ones we're objecting to, and I want those to come back to SAM for approval.
But that wasn't the contractor. That was the agency, that was Half Moon Bay who was doing it. And
yeah,
I asked Scott, they read the neg deck. They didn't bring anything up. It's not like they were unaware that this project was going to be happening.
So anyway, if anybody, I don't want to keep doing this all night, but if you have any other ideas or thoughts, Yeah, give me a buzz sometime before noon tomorrow and we'll,
Well, let me just emphasize, I think if our new attorney at SAM isn't familiar with doing these kind of bid documents, um, I would like us to consider the possibility of doing some bid document review to make sure that it's going, those documents are there to protect the agency and the public.
Yep.
I've learned over the years that they're very well crafted legal documents, and it's necessary to do that because it thinks through all sorts of contingencies, so all sides know which way things are going to go. If we're having insufficiently well written project documents down at SAM, maybe we as an agency could weigh in and help beef those up a little bit. And I don't think there's any happy party here, right? The contractor, Half Moon Bay, the members of the JPA, who's happy? So a better contract should help avoid some of that. So if Clemens, if you think in concert with Christine that that's a thing that might help us avoid some difficulties, then I would certainly support spending a little bit of money as kind of an insurance policy on that. That's just that I'm one of five, but I mean that's my thought on it.
my comment on having it by Friday, we'll have an appropriate agenda item, released to the thing. So to get any other thoughts before Monday evening, just give me a buzz because we'll get an agenda item in that'll cover all this stuff.
I'm sorry, Rick. Barbara is now handling the agenda, and the agenda has been published.
I just added an item through Kishan, a small item.
Yeah, well, it's you and Barbara, not me.
Oh, I thought you were still until she took over officially or something.
She's officially doing it, I think.
Okay,
but-
I'll check with them. I just added an item to the agenda to officially discuss and create the future SAM committee.
Right,
So,
I saw that.
May I ask a question going back to the actual work that was stopped?
sure.
Do you think that if there would have been a more knowledgeable person at site, that the contractor would not have made a mistake that he did?
I think everybody thought, like all other projects similar to this was such a simple thing. You didn't have to have a biologist there. And the contractors totally screwed up. And
what did he do?
everybody
What did
admits
the
that he
contractor-
screwed up.
What did he do wrong? Where did he go wrong?
Oh,
He ran over some willows, and like Clemens said, and like Scott said, they will grow back, and it wasn't a problem. There were a whole bunch of other problems, including they found some strange substances they were going to be running a pipe through a temporary pipe through one of the nursery drainage pipes, and all of a sudden Half Moon Bay decided that wasn't good. It was a large laundry list of things, as Clemens said, that was set up to make Sam look bad.
Yep.
The contractor failed in the sense that in a pre-construction meeting, the staging area was clearly pointed out to the southern portion of the project, and yet the contractor commenced the project and disregarded the instructions from the pre-construction meeting. So there was an attempt.
But then if somebody would have been on site to supervise the whole thing and would have been aware of what the contractor was doing, could have stopped him.
Yes, the question is just, was the project, because the project itself was a relatively minor project, in cost-wise. So I think Sam wanted to avoid the additional cost of a project manager because it would have been a percentage-wise a relatively high increase. And we've historically been able to to get away without construction manager. I think you're absolutely right. This is the right thing to do. Again, the project was relatively small. The instructions were very clear, yet the error was made. You're right. A project manager on site would have prevented it.
Well, I'd like to also add, just real quick, that if this had just been normal, the contractor would have been charged more money. But first of all, you wouldn't have shut the project down because you wouldn't have done that. And then at the end, you would have said, hey, immediately, hey, you screwed up. Here's the contract. You got to pay for that. And that should have been the last we heard about it.
Right. And because
But-
of the stop work order,
Yeah.
and we were told Half Moon Bay didn't know when they were going to be able to get things cleaned up enough for us to start work again, the contractor removed all the equipment and all his men and had to find new jobs. So the project took even longer.
Yeah, it just went on and on and on. And as everybody has said, it seemed intentional to throw their weight around and screw Sam for a whole bunch of money. And
I'm just trying to go
Yeah.
back to the actual thing that went wrong, which was clearly that there was not somebody who was knowledgeable enough to prevent the guy from taking the willows away. So what I'm saying is not what actually happened now. It's only what actually happened in the past leads us to the future. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the future,
Mhm.
that we don't want those things happening again. So therefore, I keep on coming
The
back
guy
to the
had
fact
done, the guy had
you should
done,
build in for the future, not about the past anymore, but about the future now. What you
Mhm.
should build
Right.
into the future is to prevent anything like that from happening ever again. You have to have a certain amount, let's say over $10,000, where you need a project manager. And you need to keep that in mind, because your previous experience is that, yeah, the project manager would have been $20,000, but now you pay $100,000. So in the end, the project manager would have been worthwhile.
Clemens, I got a question for you. Would it have made sense to have had a SAM staff member who participated in the pre-construction meeting to be there for the mobilization?
Well, SAM staff was in the pre-construction meeting. So was engineering staff. I think the pre-construction meeting was clear. I didn't attend it, but that's what I heard.
Yeah, no, but my question is, someone who was at that meeting, would it have made sense to have one of the staffers there on site for the mobilization of the contractor's equipment?
Yes, absolutely. It would have, and that was the plan. The problem that I think Sam ran into there is that the person who should be on site is Keishan, who was upped from the engineering position to the
Mhm.
general manager position.
Mhm.
So he's wearing two hats
Right.
still at SAM.
or
and
3 or 4.
time. But
Yeah.
that was the problem at the time. He planned to be there. He wanted to, be there, and he just came an hour late.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah, and the process, they always, the problem was SAM in general, for something that seems simple like this project, they have their people bounce in and out and check, make sure it's okay. They look, yeah, everything's going fine.
Yeah.
The whole thing was, do we want to pay a person, full-time to be standing there the entire time? And that didn't
well,
occur this time.
but I'm trying to draw the distinction between having a full-time project manager on site, overseeing the entirety of the project, and having somebody on site for half a day during mobilization, because that's a one-time nominal cost.
Yep.
And it seems to me like a not unreasonable control, unless we have, someone designated and paying for a project manager to do that job for the whole thing. Maybe we should augment it with staff.
Sure.
It's my recollection, Scott, this project was 400 feet long. So they were mobilizing and then remobilizing and setting up. And that was also part of it. It's not like it was just a manhole or a spot fix. They were replacing, you'll remember, they were replacing all that pipe.
Yeah, what I've got to work with is what I've been told by you guys, that they were supposed to be mobilizing and doing equipment storage at a location just to the south of the site. That's
Right.
what I'm working with.
Mhm.
And if they were not understanding things about the boundaries of where they could take equipment, then that's a different problem, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's why we should
Yeah.
put it in the contract.
Yeah, well, we can do, as Scott said, if mobilization is the critical time when it's being set up, ensure that either one of the staff members or an outside project manager, is there during those critical times. I have the feeling, and I can't guarantee this, Catherine, but first of all, whenever you ask for additional personnel, Half Moon Bay just says no, boom, no more people.
Mhm.
But I seem to recall, and Catherine, tell me if I'm wrong, did Half Moon Bay possibly suggest that maybe Sam's a little understaffed? And maybe they need a kind of project engineer kind of person?
I haven't heard that.
I can't
I have-
remember.
I have asked to have that put in the budget discussion, upcoming budget discussions at SAM.
Mhm.
But again, Half Moon Bay keeps saying we don't need more people,
Yeah.
but they want more work done. We just are not working our people enough.
Okay.
Okay, so let's bring this item to a close. Rick,
Yep.
thank you for bringing this to us. I think, speaking for myself and maybe for Peter as well, I think we know a little bit more about what was going on. And it's always good to bring these things back to the board and see if there's any
Good.
collective items to put forward. I'll be interested to know what kind of changes might come out of this.
Okay.
And Clemens, anything that you can recall from the managers' meetings that might be worthwhile for us to suggest putting in the contract might be useful too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I plan to do for the meeting before we actually start the meeting there is send to Barbara and Kishan. I'll just like to list like these 5 or 6 ideas as, just rather than just get everybody talking, list these suggestions, including adding another person, list like 6 or 7 suggestions just to get the ball rolling and, head it in the direction we want. So,
Since you won't be able to put it in the staff report, let's be sure and ask to have it in the minutes so that we have a record.
okay.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move to reports. Sewer Authority Midcoast side.
Just did.
All right, let's move to Midcoast Community Council.
Can I ask a quick question on Sam?
Sure, Jim.
Just really quickly, what's the status of the wet weather project?
It's
We
approved.
are, we're
That was the
getting,
SAM item. It was,
No.
we approved it and they got the little, what do you call it? The rite of passage, the
easement.
the
easement.
easement.
Approved the
And-
easement negotiations with Granada, so.
And we are working on getting the papers signed. I went down and signed the easement stuff earlier in the week, and now it needs to be notarized, so we'll get that done tomorrow.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
That
And
was
for
the
the
only
mid-
item on the agenda, so.
And for the Midcoast Council, Greg, you're much more up on that than I am, if you would be so kind.
Well, in addition to holding the, I'll call it the strategic planning meeting, a retreat to set priorities for the coming year. The thing that's currently the hot topic is the replacement of the Medio Bridge. And I'm part of a subcommittee reviewing the neg deck on that. And sometime in the next 48 hours, our committee will have prepared some written documents and submit those comments. I don't know that I'm allowed to say in advance what those comments are. But I mean, that's a key priority for the people who live there, and also a key concern for people concerned about the long-term erosive effects of armoring on the coast. So it's, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of issue.
And are you in touch with Granada, GCSD? Or SAM, because there is a
I wrote
sewer
Chuck-
pipe.
Right. So I pointed that out months ago, and I, in August, got a reply from Barbara and Chuck about their plans to reroute it. And I just this week, I had followed up a week ago. I got a copy of their drawings and their plans to reroute the pipe upstream, although not as far as Highway 1. So that sewer pipe is not going to be a main issue in the construction of a replacement or not.
Good. Rick can tell you about some coastal armoring that happened on Medio Creek in a private conversation.
I lived within.
Well,
a
I
few
think
feet of it.
I'll talk to Rick at length once he gets through the current assignment that he's working with. I would love to buy him a virtual beer. But let's wait a few days until both of us have done our homework on what our current priorities are.
I think Hop Dogma delivers.
Is that all right, Rick? We'll wait a couple of days before we talk.
That's fine.
All right, anything else for Mid-Coast Council? Okay, CSDA report.
The County Special Districts chapter meeting was pushed to early February. The LAFCO report, the meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 20th.
Okay, so that's our both items 3 and 4 here, CSDA and LAFCO.
Yep.
Okay, attorney's report, Christine. Good.
Thank you, President Boyd. Yes, I do have an attorney's report. At the last meeting, former President Slater Carter asked that I give an update on the status of the applicant, Mr. Mutri, in regards to a sewer permit at 30 Burnell Avenue. The board directed a review of the district standard form of sewer extension agreement and for staff to confer with Mr. Mutri. First, I conducted a complete review of the district's extension agreement and also considered Mr. Mutri's proposed revisions to the agreement. As you know, this has been the district standard form agreement for many years in compliance with the district's code, which comprises the district's rules and regulations with respect to construction and use of water facilities. It also complies with the district standard engineering specifications, as well as applicable statutory, state statutory requirements. I think the best way to view this is to look at the purpose of the agreement, which is to allow users to access the district's water system and to enable the district to comply with all applicable state and federal laws. Ultimately, the district is responsible for the management, operation, and protection of its water facilities, its water supply, as well as the health and safety and welfare, not only of the system, I guess, but also the district's employees, the ratepayers, and the general public. I say that because it's imperative that the district have a standard uniform agreement that achieves these purposes, covers all circumstances that are presented to the district when an application for a permit to connect to the water system is received. And the agreement has stringent standards that secure timely performance of its terms for construction and completion of a component that ultimately will become part of our water system and that we are responsible for maintaining and operating. The district has to have the ability to control the design and construction of its public water facilities. We don't negotiate a separate agreement with every applicant that makes an application for water. We have standard and uniform rules and forms that are intended to protect our water system. In my opinion, it's essential that the district maintain a uniform agreement for all its applicants. I've reviewed our agreement. I see no basis to change our standard form at this time. It complies with the law, it serves our needs, and it goes hand in hand with our permitting process and standard specifications. That's my opinion, my recommendation. And the district's water engineer has relayed this recommendation to Mr. Mutri. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think Mr. Mutri is here and may want to make a few comments. I don't know. But that's up to the board. Sorry.
No, sure. No, that sounds like a good idea. Mr. Mutri, do you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I understand and agree completely with the attorney's comment regarding this contract in relation to a developer who's developing on private land. It fits perfectly. I can see that. The problem I have with it is just that it's putting me under obligation to give away things I don't have because the land is not mine. And I would wish for perhaps a clause in the contract that says, if the applicant owns the property, do this, because I don't own the property, it would leave me feeling comfortable. That's the nature of my problem, is I cannot satisfy some of the requests, and I feel obligated by the wording in some of the cases, and that's my puzzlement. Now, certainly I spoke to Andrini, and they say they provide insurance, and so that covers that. And they will do the easement, apparently, or they have to get the easement from the city or someone, and so maybe that covers that.
It's an encroachment permit.
Encroachment permit.
Yeah, from the county. And that paragraph does cover that. It doesn't require you to give any property that you don't have. It is interpreted to require that if personal or real property is required, yes, you grant an easement, but that's not the case here. It also says you just have to make sure we have the right to be in the area to perform the work, whether that's an encroachment permit or a private easement.
Yes, the easement is apparently an outright certain grant.
Yeah, but you can't grant that.
The property gift is conditional, I agree.
I think the clause covers all of that. It covers every situation, like I said.
It covers it to the benefit and the circumstance of a private property. This is.
I disagree. But
yes,
okay.
That's.
So let me.
I understand. That's what puzzles me is how two lawyers can disagree.
Well,
really?
Are you being sarcastic?
we needed a little bit of
levity.
That's why my wife is not on the phone.
Let me ask Clemens.
That's my puzzle. You see, I can sign this, but I just feel awkward because I feel obligated to do what is I'm promising to do.
Let me ask a question to our general manager. Clemens, in practice, we've done this before. This is a fairly normal thing for us to do. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean,
have we encountered difficulties along these lines in our experience with this?
No, never.
If we were to encounter some difficulties, do we have a mechanism for dealing with exceptions?
Yes, many of those are actually spelled out and listed in the code. For example, extensions to the agreement, if something can't be implemented in the timeline, all of that is covered in the code that accompany.
And we've got experience doing extensions when the conditions warrant it.
Yes.
Okay. So I would offer my comment that I mean, I do a lot of reading of contracts too, and I'm not an attorney either, but I'm always looking for those, those edge cases that worry me. And I hear your comments and your concerns and questions, and I'm like, oh, I know these kind of concerns. At least I resonate with some of that. But I think I'm hoping you're getting some information, especially from our general manager, that may prove useful in terms of managing risk and making some decisions that are really only yours to make. We can provide you with the best information that we've got, but this is a pretty weighty decision that you're not the first one to make it, but you're the one staring at the details and the expense and the risk right now. So we want to make sure that we get you the best information that we've got to help you feel informed on this.
Yes.
I see you, Greg. But Mr. Mitchell, do you have a further comment? I mean, I can go to Greg for a minute. And we can come back to you.
Certainly go to Greg. I don't know.
Okay, Greg.
So I apologize. I don't seem to have the context for this. I read the agenda materials and Christine launched into her analysis.
This was an item that
describe the situation.
This is an item that we heard at a previous meeting, and this is follow-up action on that. So Christine went and did analysis, and has brought her analysis in the form of this verbal report.
So if I go to the agenda for the last meeting, I'll find the statement of the problem.
No, you won't, Greg. This was in response to a public comment that was made at the last meeting. Christine was directed to follow up on the public comment. And the context here is that Mr. Moutry is considering a mainline extension for a water main line and has requested to change that the district is changing our standard agreement for our standard mainline agreement. And as Christine described, we've been working with this agreement for a very long time. We rely on our legal counsel, of course, to prepare, review, and ensure that this is a sound agreement. We just went through that exercise once again, and it has to be a standard agreement that applies to various situations. That's why it may not look very specific for certain situations, but it protects the district. And that is what we're watching out for, really.
So, Greg, to your curiosity about the agenda, there's been no matter for the board itself to consider, but this is an opportunity for members of the public to bring an issue, and staff has taken it up. And so this is staff response.
And my dilemma is that at this point in the process, I'm well beyond thinking about a main extension. I've committed a lot of money to the project, which is going to be where I live. And suddenly I find myself apparently being committed to do things I cannot legally do. And I'm trying to ascertain if this really is the right contract. And the attorney is saying certainly it is the right contract. It's the best contract. And it certainly is the best contract for the district. It just leaves me gasping because of what it seems to commit me to. And that's where I have to sit. I mean, Director Scott has made that clear, and I understand that.
Yeah, I hope it was clear that Christine is asserting that from where we sit, concerns like you needing to grant an easement over property you don't own is actually covered in the wording of the contract, so that that's not on you. And that's our understanding. You made a good and fun comment about differences of opinion between attorneys, but that's, you now have our attorney's result of her review and her professional judgment on that matter. So I think we're trying very hard to make sure we understand and address the concerns you have to the extent that we can.
And I want to
Yeah, and
thank
I will
you.
say that was just one of the issues raised in Mr. Mutri's revisions. And I know what he's talking about because I've pulled it up, but you know, about a third of the contract was just crossed out. Security, insurance, bonds. I mean, even if we got past that one issue, there's no way we could agree to your changes. Unfortunately, they're required by law.
Well, my understanding is that the contractor provides the bond and the insurance, which is in fact what I discovered talking to the contractor. They do that. And then I asked myself, well, what am I providing?
Right.
Do I provide an
But
additional
you're
bond?
responsible, ultimately
That's right.
responsible to cause that to happen. That's what I know, that's what the agreement says.
It doesn't say ultimately responsible. It says that
Well, that's,
I have to provide it, you know?
yeah,
That's
you
not
have
the
to
same.
provide it, cause it to
Sometimes
be
this
provided.
contract says the contractor provides it. Sometimes it says the applicant provides it. This specifically says the applicant provides it. That's me. And
I
that's
understand.
what puzzles me. You see what I mean?
No, I understand, but I
Oh.
disagree.
Yeah.
Well,
so-
and I
so-
think
so where we are-
it's a good thing to have reviewed this. Just like with the SAM construction contracts, but I think we have our attorney's opinion.
So let me sum up. We've got Christine has reviewed it for compliance to our code and against state statutory requirements. We've got Clemens comments informed by our experience over the years working with people on a variety of these contracts. You've heard their comments, and but we appreciate your concerns, and I certainly appreciate that you're trying to get it right. I mean, I'm all for doing that. I think where we are as an agency, we have our responsibility, and we've got the experience. And while we may not see blockages, you may, but this is where individuals considering projects have to make some decisions. So I hope, seriously, in all seriousness, I hope you find some of the information you've gotten from this interaction to be useful as you pursue this. And if you do move forward with this, we've worked with quite a number of people to help them get through their projects, and they're now members of the community living in homes that are connected to the system. So there's been a lot of success with people doing that, and I would look at that and give that some weight. Right, director's reports. Anyone with a director's report?
Nope.
General manager's report.
Nothing in addition to the written report. Thank you.
Okay.
Could you explain, Clemens, the numbers after the statements on your written report? I'm a little, there's like 2 and 3 and I wasn't sure if that was the number of instances or what.
You're referring to at the beginning, or?
During the course of the report.
Yeah, that's the number of essentially, work orders, 20 work orders.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So for those of you who haven't been with us before in the staff report, I just mentioned on the website, there's the agenda, which is right at the top, right there on the front page. And it's just the short list of items that we're going to go through. If you click down into the link below it, you can go get the full packet, and the packet contains all of these things that we've been talking about. And so the general manager generally has a report in there with a lot of the detail of what keeps the manager and the crew and the staff busy. And there's some really interesting, good stuff in there to help kind of paint a more full picture of all the different kinds of things the agency is doing on a day-to-day basis. Do we have any items that anyone wants to see get onto a future agenda item? If you come up with things, as you know, you can bring it to me, you can bring it to Clemens, and we'll see about getting that agendized. We are going to recess and then after a short break, reconvene in closed session to cover the closed session items about existing litigation, the public employee performance evaluation, and the conference with labor negotiators and conference with real property negotiators. And then when we come out, we'll report any action taken, if any. With that, we thank the members of the public for joining us, and now's the time to say goodbye, and we'll go into closed session here in a few minutes.
And
Excuse me, President
happy
Boyd,
New Year to everyone.
Before we reconvene, I just need to make a statement for the record that Director Lohman will be recusing himself from the item 3 on the closed session agenda pertaining to real property negotiations because of a conflict of interest under Government Code Section 87-100. Thank you.
And by that, we mean specifically that he will not be in the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct. Thank you. Probably.
Okay.
Scott, just real quick, I got a funny thing here. I do Sunday New York Times crossword puzzles, and I was working with this one, and this is for Christine. Result of a judicial conflict of interest. And the answer was, of course, recusal. So I'm going to be recusing myself from the meeting at item 3. But I thought it was fun that the New York Times pointed that out to me. So.
Not every day it brings it home personally at a personal level like that. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to recess and come back from closed session. How's a 10-minute break sound?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.